Is presented by uh, TestingWiz and Signet Infotech jointly. We would be, I would be joined by my co-panelist Dakshesh Shah from our TestingWiz division, as well as Neerav Sanghvi, the product lead for TestingWiz. We look forward to doing an informative session of about 20-25 minutes. We would be covering a few test scenarios, few actual test scripts, how you can configure databases, different use cases, how you can use to carry out database testing, batch processing, exporting information in and out of your staging and production servers, and a variety of ways how you can use TestingWiz on doing database testing. Our agenda is explaining database testing in general, then talking about how to set up databases for carrying out database-driven testing, how to verify the data that you're using while testing your applications or while handling the production build of your applications, and followed up by a few live examples. I'll be putting over to Dakshesh to help us guide through the introduction and nuances of database testing, and then Neera would be soon taking us up. For any questions or queries, we look forward to covering them at the end of the session. So feel free to hold them up, and whenever once we are into the question and answer session, we would be more than happy to answer your questions.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Dakshesh Shah. I am the testing manager for TestingWiz. Today, myself and my colleague, Mr. Neerav Sanghvi, will be sharing the knowledge about database testing using TestingWiz. As for those who have already joined TestingWiz previous webinars, would be aware that TestingWiz contains different features and different functionalities involved for testing any web applications. For today's verification or today's agenda, we would specifically want to talk about the database testing part and today's environment in the current world. The applications are becoming more complex and complex day by day as people are developing the applications on different platforms, including mobile platforms, as well as different types of use cases that are coming out in the market. And for all of the people who are involved in software testing so far would be aware that for general people, testing is all about just functional testing. But as a tester, we know that testing doesn't only comprise of functional testing. It includes a lot of other things. One of the important aspects is the database testing, where we just need to ensure that whatever functionality testing that we are doing, it adjusts according to the business logic that we have for the application. And there are different layers for the application that contains UI layer, business logic, data access layer, and then comes the database part. A lot of people don't even know what kind of database their application is using, what kind of database schema that the application is consisting of. But as a tester, it becomes really important for us to test that part of the application also. Just to give you an example, whenever we are testing any application, what we need to ensure is that if you are interacting in any form or any kind of calculations happening inside of the application, we need to verify the same information it's getting stored in the databases or not. If there are any triggers or other associated features of the database, are those being applied properly or not? But how do you do it automatically? As a tester, we need to understand the database schema, database level of understanding of all this SQL queries and everything. So with the help of testing, we have tried to minimize the interaction with the database itself. Instead, we are just concentrating on the minimal functionality that is required for performing the database-related testing part of activities. So as we talked about, what is the need of database testing? As the whole software testing lifecycle involves of ongoing activities, we need to prepare the testing reports for each and every release. And for that, we need to ensure that the complete functionality of the application is working according to what it's supposed to do. And it is one of the other ways of verifying the business logic layer. As we already mentioned that just by checking the UI, it doesn't specify. We will not be able to test the business logic part of the application. In that, if you want to test it thoroughly and effectively, so what we need to do is we would need to understand the business rules, and then we need to also verify the results. If there are any interactions with the database happening, then we need to verify those results from the database side as well. So that's where database testing comes into picture. And right now what's happening is that a lot more emphasis is being given to exploratory testing when database comes into picture, but it's really required for us to prepare different test scripts in terms of like prepare different SQL queries which you would be able to utilize across different scenarios to test the database part of things thoroughly, and it gets a bit tedious at that time. So that's why when we talk about our database testing, we are trying to automate those things in such a way that you could easily utilize all those things over and over again over a period of time without with the reliable results that it provides. So that's what we will be covering as part of our live example, how we are going to do that. But before that, so I'll hand it over to my colleague who will just explain what are the different scenarios that we should be able to cover or we are able to cover using testing with. So handing it over to Mr. Nirav Sanghvi.
Thank you, Dakshesh. And this is Nirav, and I would like to tour you through the various database testing scenarios that might be of interest to all of you. So as Dakshesh has rightly mentioned, that it's not all about the UI testing or the intermediate layer testing that a tester should be doing, but there are a lot of scenarios wherein we being a tester can dig into the system internals and can find out the critical bugs that development team might have introduced. For example, we always have a need of whatever data is there in production environment, it has to be there in QA environment, so that bulk amount of data can be used in the QA testing at the test environment, and a kind of balanced data that is available in test environment can be utilized to simulate a kind of load testing. So you have a scenario wherein data is already available in production environment and you would like to dump it in the test environment. So there are various steps involved, like you go to the production environment database, you make a connection to that, you export the data, and on the other end you try connect to the test environment and import data back into that. So this kind of scenario can be directly mapped with the help of testing whiz very easily. One more type can be like security testing. So say for example there is a user table and there are a few fields including username, password, and when it was created, when it was last updated, and so on and so forth. And we particularly are interested in knowing if the passwords are being stored as a plain text or if at all it is being stored as an encrypted text. So instead of just checking the username and password as a part of login process, what we can do is we can query the database and we can see to that if the database are storing plain passwords or not. So it's just a matter of plain query, and once the query is executed we have results available. So that kind of security testing can be performed. One more is transaction level checks and orphan record testing. It means, say for example there is a wizard and there are say 3 to 4 steps available as a part of wizard, or there is a complicated UI wherein there are a couple of tabs available. So say for instance you are working for a pharma domain application and there is an information related to the patient, his history, and the insurance that he is having. So all of this information is being entered by user. He has entered the first string, that is the patient information has been added. You move on to the next step and you are trying to insert the insurance related information. At this particular point of time you are getting an error on UI saying that there are a few errors or there are a few validation checks. It means that if I take a look at the database, I should not be having any records created for patient because there is already an error for the insurance of that particular patient. So if that is a transaction handled properly at the code layer, everything should have been rolled back properly. If it is not the case, then the data for patient would be available in database, but data for insurance would not be. So this kind of orphan checks can be done with the help of database testing. Database constraints can be checked. So you would like to check if something is applied at the UI layer, or if the checks are made at the database layer, so the schema is proper or not. Say for example, there is a check for required field. So at times people used to do a lot of check with the help of JavaScript only on the UI layer, but data can be inserted directly on databases. So that can be checked. Compliance check testing. So again, so if you are checking the delete functionality for a particular module, and there is a guideline that no record should be deleted physically, then on UI what I might see is the record has been deleted successfully, but in the backend what I should be checking is the physical record is existing, and there should be a flag which has been turned on. So it should be a logical delete, it should not be a physical delete. So if I want to make sure that if that kind of compliance are being modeled, then it should be checked with the help of database testing. And at times we don't have UI available, and a lot of things are being controlled with the help of background jobs, for example cron jobs. So as soon as the job is triggered, we have a few log statements available, and we would like to check something if something is happening at the database end or not. So that kind of checks can be handled with the help of databases by executing a very simple queries and connection to the databases. So these are the various testing scenarios that would be useful for day-to-day testing activities. As far as testing with is concerned, there is a pretty straightforward connection available, how you can go and connect to the databases like MySQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, and IBM DB2. So these are the 4 most popular databases we can connect to with the help of testing with. We'll tour you through that, how we can connect to all of these databases. Of course, you can connect to more than one instance of a particular database or the combination of databases with the help of testing with. You can execute any kind of SQL scripts, be it the insert statement or select statement. You can do that, and it can be triggered with the help of test scripts for the verification purpose. And once the scripts are prepared, it can obviously be shared with the other team members so that they can also get benefit of the scripts that has been prepared. Moving next, we would like to showcase you a few live examples on how we can set up the database testing with the help of testing with, and I would request Dakshesh again to tour us through the live demonstration. Over to Dakshesh.
Alright, so as we discussed earlier, we want to give you a live example at least for a couple of different scenarios, where the most basic scenario most of the people would encounter is they would want to use real-time dynamic data. So for that, what we would just go ahead and do it is we'll just share Alright, so I hope everybody is able to see my screen. So if you're not able to see my screen, at least just write it down in the chat window so that I come to know. Okay, so now I hope everybody is able to see my screen, whereas so you should be seeing the testing with window now. I already have my project open. Before continuing with the project, I'll just show you how to set up the database itself. I've already set up a couple of different databases, but I'll just share. how you can do it very easily. If you can see my screen, then you can choose the type of the database that you can select from this drop down, and then provide the alias name, the database name, the different information that is required to configure a database if you are aware of database connection strings and everything. So that's how, if you see my screen, I've already set up a couple of databases. So if I open that window, you can see I've already provided different information. And just to verify that my connection is working properly, what I would do is just, once I select that type of database, I'll just say test connection. And it's in the backend, it's trying to make a connection to that particular database. It may take a couple of minutes, but so that is how what we are trying to, even before getting started, we always want to ensure that the database is connected, because sometimes due to connection string issues, so as you can see, the second database is connected successfully. I mean, seems like there are some connection issues with the MySQL database right now. So what we'll try to do is we'll just consider a scenario where, let's say you have production environment and you want to utilize real-time data for testing any updates that you have on your staging environment. So what we'll be doing is, just give me 1 second. Alright, so in this case, what we are trying to do is, as this is a production environment, if you can see this particular query, we are trying to fetch all the data from the production database, and we should be able to, we'll be storing that data into a placeholder. That is an internal database we have created that stores the data as part of this application, and then we can utilize those data sets into different test scripts wherever needed. So just to give you an example, if you look at this query, it says we are grabbing all the data from the customers table. So now when I execute this, as you can see, the test execution we are also trying to set up another database to see if we can recreate the same scenario using different database as well, so that we will be able to identify it in a proper manner. Okay, as you can see, the connection was established successfully. So the first test, it says it's passed successfully, but now we just want to verify if the results were stored in this database or not. But as you can see, I think there was some connection issue with the first our production environment, so that's why we are not getting any data. But so now, as what we've done is we'll just change the database to what we just added. We'll be executing the same scenario again just to showcase that it again says that as cases passed successfully. Think we are still facing some issues with the database itself. Just give us a couple of minutes, so we'll try to work that out. In the meantime, we'll just so that was the purpose. Basically, what we are trying to do is we'll just fetch the data from the production environment into the QA environment, into the QA database, and then we should be able to utilize that data for our testing purpose. Okay, as we have made some more changes, just 1 second, and we'll try to execute the same script again to see if it succeeds this time. All right, I hope. Yes, so as you can see, a lot of information has been displayed now, and what we would want to do is, instead of using all the data that is available, we'll just use couple or 2 or 3 different records for our next test script. So I'll just delete all the other records that we have available just for a second. So we got our data into our placeholders. Now we would want to use the same data in the next test script. So that is a real-time scenario where I'll just skip the first one. Now in this case, what we are trying to do is, as you can see that we are just trying to, the name of the placeholder was db count where we stored the data. So we'll just make some minor modification here. As you can see, if you have already placeholder available, all the column names, I mean, the database prefixed by the column name would be available as a variable, so you could utilize that information anywhere as part of your test scripts. Now we'll just execute, we'll go ahead and execute the same script again, and you'll see that whatever information that we have stored in the placeholder, we'll be utilizing that information for verifying this functionality, of download form. We'll be executing the same loop again and again till the time all the records have been utilized. And after that, what we are trying to achieve is that we'll just go through this applications database itself to verify that if you are inserting these 3 records in the database, are those records available in the database? So that is what we'll just try to get from it's now inserting the last record, and now the test script should stop. Okay, here it goes, and the test report says it's successful. Now we would want to verify the same. Okay, now you can see that there are 3 records, so the test was executed 3 times. Now what we want to do is just do the verification of the same scenario again. So I'll just skip and unskip the verification scenario, where you can see that what we are trying to verify is that we'll try to get the name and email from the applications database to see how many, I mean the last 3 records should be the ones that we just used recently, I mean from the previous test scenario. So we'll just do that and execute this test scenario. So what we will do is, from the applications database itself, we will fetch the records. Okay, it says pass. One thing I want to show is it will be stored in the result placeholder. So if I go to result, here you can see that it's the same name and email IDs that we've used for performing the functionality on the real-time application. That's how we would be able to utilize the database testing concept using testing with. It's pretty easy to set up initially. You just have to provide the database connection strings, and as Neerav already mentioned, there are a lot of different use cases that we can prepare using this functionality, like verification of constraints, rollback transaction related information, security testing where we want to verify that the proper access user has proper access or not. All those things can be verified using different commands from testing viz as part of this database testing concept itself. So that's what this is a very basic scenario that we wanted to cover as part of today's webinar. If you still want to go into the details of how exactly it could be utilized, please download our software and you can try it out by yourself, and if you're still facing a trouble, please get in touch with us and we will definitely try to help you out. Now, if you have questions, just hold on for a second. Once we are about to finish our presentation, and you can ask all the different types of questions that is coming across your mind. So that is what we wanted to cover as part of live example. After going through this live example, probably you would be able to figure out the different benefits of doing database testing with testing viz. Now, as you can see that to set up the whole backend testing verification itself, it takes a very little less time. The reason is being that once you set up the scripts, as Neerav mentioned earlier, it becomes really easy for you to maintain the script and share it across your different team members who could utilize it right away without setting up any different type of connections or everything, because everything has been set up completely. It's very easily integrated with the functional testing, as I already mentioned. When you're talking about UI testing and functional testing, if you integrate backend testing with it itself, that's how you'll be able to cover the complete the application testing thoroughly and effectively. So that's when you can confidently go ahead and tell to your client that we have tested the application properly. We have not found any issues or whatever other quality parameters that you have, you can share it with the client. Obviously, as you've gone through this presentation and the live examples, you realize that the setting up of database testing functionality is really easy. It's not that much complicated from the user's perspective, and it's very easy to maintain. As we already mentioned, We can query out a lot of different use cases for database testing perspective, including verification of encryption of data, constraint verification, access right verification. So all these things can be carried out with this setup very easily. As with that said, I think we are already at an end to our presentation. Now, we are already open for questions. If anybody has to ask or they have anything in mind related to database testing using TestingWiz, you have 10 minutes available for asking any question. We will be answering all the questions one by one.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining us through. Do send us any questions that you have via email or through our website. We look forward to coming back to you and joining again on another session where we would talk about image comparison using TestingWiz on our next webinar. Till then, have a good week and a good year ahead, and Merry Christmas to everyone. And we look forward to talking to you again in the next year. Bye for now.